Great. Okay, can everybody hear me? Terrific. Well, good morning. We've got a very exciting event we're going to undertake today, which is to inaugurate our new CCOMC. And I thought I might take a few minutes with such a wonderful cross-section of our SHAPE family to talk a bit about why we are bringing this new element into our SHAPE operation. And I want to make one point very clear, because it will be, in the end, a small number of people who work in the CCOMC. And it's important we all remember that this is a large staff, and what we are doing is not creating some kind of a new SHAPE staff. What we are doing is putting a new battery into it, and a very modern battery. But that battery of the CCOMC is really designed to help provide power, information to the larger staff. And in the end, it's about that larger staff. That's how we conduct operations. The CCOMC is just a part of this very large SHAPE organization, this operational headquarters. So what I thought I'd do is talk a little about some of the challenges we're facing today, and then about how we see this CCOMC fitting into our responses to these challenges. First, we all know where this is. This is Afghanistan. I would argue that the conflict in Afghanistan is precisely the type of modern operation for which the CCOMC will have enormous utility as it drives the larger staff here in our support of the operational commander. Why is that? It's because Afghanistan is a place where we will not succeed simply by the application of military lethal force. Afghanistan demands a comprehensive approach. Counterinsurgency demands a comprehensive approach. The complexities of the environment in which Afghanistan exists, its neighbors, the narcotics that you see illustrated by the field of poppies here, the governance challenges, the corruption issues, all of these things cannot be solved from the barrel of a gun. They have to be addressed with a complex, comprehensive approach. Next, where's this? Who would like to stop NATO? Unfortunately, this is in the Balkans. This is Kosovo. These are Kosovo ethnic Serbs in the north who, as we all know, have erected barricades and are attempting to stop NATO. Of course, we're the third responder behind the European Union and the Kosovo police. Again, this is a very complex environment. We can't solve this by simply taking a tank, as much as we would like to do it, and driving right through that thing. It requires connecting with the diplomatic community. It requires connecting with the legal community in Kosovo. It requires partnering with the European Union. We've just discovered, fortunately, that the OSCE will be part of the elections in Kosovo. Thus, our mission, our operations must connect with that international body. So this need for a comprehensive approach, Afghanistan, the Balkans, you start to see the pattern. Next, please. This is Syria. Today, we don't have a NATO mission in Syria. We are not planning for NATO operations in Syria. But we must closely monitor the situation in Syria. We must be prepared in case our political leadership asks us to take on challenges here. So again, a complex situation, not traditional military. Today, in addition to the violence in Syria, the other big issue, of course, is humanitarian. There are 300,000 refugees in and around Syria. Probably 400,000, including 100,000 out of the country and 300,000 internally displaced. So humanitarian affairs. Michel Rettenauer will tell you that as we operated in Libya, this was an enormous part of what we needed to do. This is where the CCOMC can help connect us with the comprehensive international humanitarian communities, because whatever happens in Syria, if we become involved, humanitarian work would be part of it. Next, please. Ballistic missile defense. Today, many nations are developing ballistic missiles. They represent a growing challenge. It's high technology. It requires the ability to sense the environment, to know what's coming both in a technical sense, but also in a diplomatic, intelligence, and informational sense. The speed of this problem is extraordinary. Thus, we need a staff, the big staff, a big command structure that can respond quickly to this kind of high-tech challenge in this unfolding 21st century. Next, please. And then there's piracy. Now, I'm a Navy officer, a sea captain. You know, there's nothing I like better than a few pirates to chase around. But this is much more, as we all know, than a nuisance problem. This is a $10 billion discontinuity in the global transportation grid. This is a form of crime that is causing today a dozen ships and 200 mariners held hostage. We're making progress, but how do we solve this? Again, we are not going to solve this by the simple application of military force, by having 20 ships patrolling the coast of East Africa. The area in which these pirates operate is the size of Europe. So to address piracy with 20 ships would be like patrolling all of Europe with 20 police cars. It won't work. So what do you need to do? You need complex systems that can help identify, find, fix, move assets, and also connect with efforts ashore, that comprehensive effort ashore. So I would argue, as we look at this list of challenges we've talked about, we see they are transnational, they require interagency work, they require international coalitions, and they require connecting to the private sector as well with humanitarian organizations. So part of this very complex environment. Lastly, next, you will see cyber. Now, who are these two young men? They look like they would be working down at the mall scooping ice cream. These are two criminals in their 20s. On the left, Alberto Gonzalez. On the right, Maxim Yastremsky. The left is an American, the right is a Ukrainian. Together, these two young men perpetrated a credit card cyber scheme and stole $23 billion. Credit card fraud is a $3 trillion a year problem. $3 trillion a year problem. And this cyber world is part of the challenges that we must face. So we need an approach that helps us connect in this very complex world, which is also the ultimate private-public connection and threatens our military zone as well. Lastly, next, devastating earthquake in eastern Turkey. Hassan knows this very well. This is an example of humanitarian disaster relief. NATO has been involved in this in the past, most famously in Pakistan, responding to both earthquakes, more recently to flooding. That connection with the private sector, not traditional military work, but supporting civil authorities, critically important. Part of what the CCOMC can bring to the larger staff. So, when we look at all of these kinds of challenges, we see that 21st century security is very different than 20th century security. So we need a staff with a CCOMC within it that can address these kinds of transnational challenges. Next, please. So we've been thinking about it, as Rodin would say. And we've come up with this idea. Many of the people in this room have contributed to this a great deal, this idea, which I think we are at the right time with the right set of ideas to address these modern security challenges. In fact, when people ask me, occasionally they do, well, why do you need this new CCOMC? My response to them is that you shouldn't ask me why I need a new center to address 21st century security. You should ask me why I didn't realize this 5 years ago. We're behind the curve, in my view, in developing that kind of tools to address these kinds of challenges. And I'm convinced this CCOMC will make the larger staff able to do its vitally important job in the NATO command structure. Next, please. And it's all about connection. It's all about building bridges. In 20th century security, we built walls. We had the Maginot Line in World War I. We had the Iron Curtain. We had the Berlin Wall. We had the Bamboo Curtain. We built walls and fortresses. We tried to defend ourselves behind walls of brick and mortar. I would argue in the 21st century, we defend ourselves best by connecting, by building bridges. And that, I think, is what the CCOMC can do for us, both within the staff and within the larger world of security. Next, please. Here's the motto. Draw your attention to the bottom. Think, plan, act strategically. Next, please. It's a global approach. I want a CCOMC that is able to look around the horizon and then inform the appropriate larger operational staff so that our staff can take the right action to energize the command structure so we can be most responsive to our political leadership as they demand tasks. And I would argue that our task will continue to be broader and broader, not more and more narrowly defined. Next, please. If I were to put one image in your mind about the CCOMC, it would be this: scanning the horizon, getting ahead of the problems, finding the next challenge for us, and helping us understand how to address it in this 21st century context. So horizon scanning I would put at the very top. Next, please. Innovation. I would look for the CCOMC to help us from the right-hand side into the accelerating world of the future. And this is not just a CCOMC function. This is really about the larger staff, as is this entire presentation. So I look at one of the innovations that we can do from within the CCOMC is to help us energize the larger staff to think innovatively about this 21st century. Next, please. And this is a busy slide, but if you look at the top, it's international organizations. On the right side are national organizations, and over here are private organizations. BMW, McDonald's, Facebook, Twitter, over here on the left. On the right, national interagency structures. And at the top, these big international things, the United Nations, the European Union, the World Bank, ourselves and NATO. Integrating them is the comprehensive approach. And this is what we can do effectively within the CCOMC to help us then move the larger staff. Next, please. I look for responses. These are different images of how to respond to crisis. Upper left, myself and General Makarov, one response to crisis is just that. It's consultation. It's reaching out. It's talking to other actors in the international scene. When General Makarov and I were looking at that globe, we were talking about piracy, where Russia plays an important role working with us and typically has a task force on station. Upper right, another response can be surveillance. It can be using the tools at our disposal to move up the level of knowledge, information, and intelligence that we have, using our technologies, using our connections, again, building bridges. Lower left, a response can be putting coalitions together. That's the European Union counter-piracy mission, the NATO counter-piracy mission, and the Combined Maritime Forces, which is an independent coalition working from the Persian Gulf, working with partners like Russia, China, India, and other nations. So another type of response can be building a coalition to take on a challenge. And fourth and finally, let us not forget why we exist. In the end, we are here for those awful times when lethal combat power must be applied. Fortunately, there are many solutions before we get to that point. But we have to have an organization, both our broader staff and the CCOMC, that are responsive and can develop these kinds of recommendations and responses to us. Next, please. One of my predecessors, General Eisenhower, he's remembered as a strong combat commander. What he did very well, in addition to command, was to synthesize, to build coalitions, to connect. Of all the American generals that my nation has produced, he was the best in the international environment at connection. He, because he is also the first leader of this organization, I think is an appropriate that he would understand why we have put this CCOMC together. Next, please. So to conclude, and many of you have seen me use this image before, in today's world, in 21st century security, it's not like a light switch on and off. On, we go to combat. Off, we go to our barracks. That's not how the world works in this 21st century. Today, it's a rheostat. Like you turn up the lights or you turn them down with the rheostat. And the spectrum can run from war and hard power, combat, that image I showed you of combat, to soft power, pure humanitarian work. The key is, all of us on this staff, we must be able to move that dial. We have to be able to find the right setting. And I think that's where the CCOMC can help us the most. As they scan the horizon, as they take all the innovation from all of this brilliant staff and bring it together, as they help produce ideas and options and recommendations that come through the larger staff. The CCOMC is part of building 21st century approaches to security, which in the end is about connection. I'll close with a word or two about, next please, the summit. We're about to have this NATO Summit. It's going to be in Chicago in the United States. First time a summit's been in the United States in 20 years. It's going to be in Chicago, which is in the center of the United States. It's a heartland city. It's President Obama's hometown. He's very proud to be the host of the summit this year. One of the things that will be discussed at the summit will be this idea of the comprehensive approach, of partnerships, of the kind of ideas that the CCOMC is built upon. I think that shape will be well represented at this summit, because this is a staff that knows how to create security in the 21st century, which is about building bridges, building connections, using innovation, and in the end, using the best of all of us to create the sum of security. So congratulations to the folks who've worked on the CCOMC. I know that the larger staff will benefit from it. In the end, it's really about the larger staff and how it works to support the command structure. But I do believe the CCOMC will be a fundamental and integral part of helping us create 21st century security. Let me close by saying what a terrific 3 years I've had on the staff here. I'm going to be around for a while yet. Don't worry, I'm not leaving anytime soon. I look forward to bringing this concept along into fruition, and I look forward to working with each one of you every day as we go forward on this journey in this 21st century. Give yourselves a round of applause. I'm very lucky to work with all of you. Thank you.